Hello and welcome to another episode of the Duct Tape Marketing Podcast. This is John Chance and no guest today. I'm doing a solo show. I want to talk about something that I've been working on maybe for 15 years, but I finally got around to actually creating a framework that I would call is my version of taking marketing strategy and putting it onto one page that really gives you the ability to capture all the essential elements of your marketing strategy. So certainly to use as an internal document, but I think it's a great tool to also use as a creative brief or as a way to explain to somebody your business that you're maybe trying to get to do some marketing work for you. Now, there's a lot of research that goes into the various elements of this, but a lot of times we do marketing strategy and we spend days, months, weeks developing it, putting it into a document, and then that document goes into a drawer somewhere because it's 40 pages or something. And so what I wanted to do was create something that could be something that you would come back and it would be the overview, if you will, that went on one page that you could share with people, you could print out, you could hang up, you could do lots of things with. I call it the Duct Tape Marketing Snapshot, and I want to go over the various elements in that. And I'll also invite you, if you would like us to do this with you, go through an exercise with you. If you'd like to just see a copy of it, you can always reach out to me at john@ducttapemarketing.com and just put in the subject line, Marketing Snapshot, and I'll send it out, or we'll discuss how this might apply to your business. But essentially what the snapshot does is it is broken up into, and those of you that are watching the video version of this in places like YouTube we'll see a graphic right now, which is the actual form itself that we created called the Marketing Snapshot. Those of you that I said will actually have it there if you want to go to the show notes as well, those of you that are just listening. Otherwise, I will do my best to describe it as visually as possible. So essentially, it's broken up into three core elements, which are really the three core elements that I think a marketing strategy has to address. And that is your brand strategy, your growth strategy, and then your customer strategy. And this is really following the customer journey, if you will. It's how people become aware of your brand. It's certainly how you grow and turn them into customers, and then what you do after they become customers. So it is a way for us to really address all the key areas and make sure that we're not leaving something out. And I think that that's one of the things that's the hardest about talking about marketing strategy to folks, is that it's very confusing what it is. So I've tried to simplify it. I think marketers make marketing overly complex. So I've tried to simplify marketing strategy into those three buckets: brand strategy, growth strategy, and customer strategy. All right. And then within those, there's a total of 16 elements that we want to address. And these are things that they're not going to be new to you necessarily, but I think that organizing them, I should say, in this fashion, hopefully will give new light to how they apply to your business. So under the brand strategy, I mean, we're going to make considerations like, mission, vision, values there. What's the brand personality? I mean, how do you want to be perceived by your ideal clients, by the market? What are some ways that you're going to ensure consistency in messaging and visuals and customer interactions really across all the channels? Those are things that have to be part of your brand strategy. But clearly defining who your ideal client is certainly a component of it, and not just the demographics, but really what they believe, what they fear, the value that they're looking for, how they like to buy, where they find their information. Those are all parts of that definition. I lean very heavily on this concept of core message. That is another key component of this idea, and that is not the message that says who you are, what you do, but the message that clearly defines your unique value proposition. The promise to solve your ideal client's greatest problem. That's what we want to see in a core message. It is certainly useful to write down your mission, your why, really defining the underlying purpose of the values that are driving your business. I think that belongs in brand strategy, certainly, and that belongs in something that any tool that you're going to use to communicate your business and what it stands for. Certainly being able to share that publicly is great. And then the last piece I put in brand strategy is a consideration of what are the primary marketing channels that we're going to use to reach our ideal client? And I believe that this belongs in brand strategy, because a lot of our reaching there is going to be just to create awareness, is going to be to build trust. And we want to make sure that we're talking, that we're at least making a consideration about what are the most important channels for us to pursue. And by comparison, what are the ones we should be leaving out of the mix? And I think that that's just having that consideration can be very helpful. All right, now we move to the next category, or the next big row or section in this, and that's growth strategy. This is essentially how you plan to scale and grow your business. We've got the brand locked down. We know who we're targeting. We know the message that we're going to use to attract them and where we're going to use that message. So now we need to say, okay, how do we create awareness for the brand? How do we attract new prospects? How do we get people to know about us? You'll see in this tool that I heavily sprinkle in our concept of the customer journey called the Marketing Hourglass, and its 7 stages of know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. Awareness is all about, quite often, getting people to know you, and consequently, hopefully, to like what you're doing or like what they see, and then ultimately to get them to trust you enough to want to go deep enough to find out, what if you can actually solve their specific problems and challenges. So, after awareness plan, we have lead capture. So once somebody finds out about you and they start coming and visiting, and maybe you've invited them through your social channels to work with you, or to get some new, to get a checklist, or to get an ebook, or to get some content, then what's your lead capture plan? How are we going to actually start capturing those leads so that we can continue to market to them, or maybe a better way, continue to build trust so that they want to go deeper. We have something on there called the Brand Love Plan. And this is really just an admission that we need to intentionally think in how we're going to foster a deep connection between our brand and our customers. I mean, what are some of the things that we can do to create advocates, to create exceptional value, to create exceptional experiences? Having a thought about, what's our wow? How are we going to wow people when they start to come in and surprise them and delight them? A lot of companies do it. Some do it without thought, but I guarantee you those great experiences that you've had with a lot of organizations, a great deal of that was intentional. So let's consider that for ourselves. The lead nurture plan is the next element on here under Brand Love. And that's really, what are we going to do to build trust and relationships really with the leads until they're ready to buy? I mean, it is a journey. A lot of times people talk about how much marketing has changed. And granted, it's changed a lot. But the thing that's really changed the most is how people can buy now, how they choose, the options they have available to them. And so a great deal of building trust enough to charge a premium, to be seen as the obvious go-to, is a lot about what you do in nurturing. Then we intentionally have, I think for a lot of businesses, trust is probably the most important element. It's often not looked at as an intentional one, but what are we going to do to establish even the credibility and trust with an audience enough for somebody who is now looking at us deeply to say, okay, I'm going to exchange my money with you. And to me, the trust category, to a lot of points, a lot of businesses that actually charge a premium, that if you've ever paid more to get something because you trusted the result would be there, you trusted the brand was going to be there, many of us have done that. Many of us have paid more and are willing to pay more when we trust that we will get the result from who we're working with. So what are the ways that we're going to build trust? Testimonials, case studies, guarantees, transparent business practices, even who we associate with, social proof. I mean, those are all things that are part of really the overarching marketing plan. That's why they show up here on the snapshot. So the last two pieces the last piece, I should say, in the growth plan is then your lead conversion plan. I mean, how are we going to convert those nurtured leads into paying customers? We need to have an actual process that can be taught, that's certainly aligned with what the customer needs, but then also aligns with the core message that we're communicating, that creates, the buying experience itself is often where referrals and repeat business happen, because even if we get a result for somebody, but the experience of getting there was not that great, we're going to lose a lot of trust. And so, what is our lead conversion plan that not only results in us converting a higher number of leads, but is also something we can scale, that we can start teaching to others. I think that's where a lot of businesses really struggle, is when the founder has been really good at selling, and they end up being trapped because they're the only ones who can sell, because they're really not even sure how they do it or why they do it, and why they're so successful at it. And so when it comes time to hiring a sales team, they really flounder because there is no real process. So great to have at least a process. It doesn't have to be the most perfect one. You're always going to be refining it, trying to make it better. But if you don't start with, at least here is our process or our plan for lead conversion, you're going to struggle. All right, now we're going to go to the third stage, which is the customer strategy. So this is where we're going to map out the journey of everything that's going to happen, or that we hope happen once somebody becomes a customer. So we're going to start with new customer onboarding plan. What's the way that we're going to create the most positive first experience for a new customer? So these are, onboarding, orientation. It's amazing how often people don't give this some thought, and every new customer is brought in, has different expectations, a different experience, and it really dilutes the brand. So we're going to map out what's going to happen when somebody says yes, when they become a new customer. It's obviously going to be different for every business, but having a plan allows you to, again, delegate and scale, because everybody learns the plan and how to deliver the same experience. But it also really creates consistency in working with your business. And I think that a lot of times customers really crave that consistency, and that's part of the experience. Knowing what to expect and having it delivered as promised is really a great part of the experience. Speaking of experience, that's the next one. What is going to be our overarching customer experience plan? So how are we going to ensure a consistently positive experience throughout the journey? So, really mapping out everything we want to do. But this is also the place where, getting feedback from existing customers to look for ways to continuously improve, having SOPs, as part of the experience. We talked about the new customer, but certainly the ongoing fulfillment as well. The next two components of really are kind of the repeat bucket, and that is your customer retention plan. What are we going to do to keep customers engaged, keep them coming back, retain them, sell them more, maybe sell them other products, maybe sell them on another tier or layer of products and services. So really having tactics in place that are going to focus on, certainly measure, but focus on customer retention, and things like loyalty programs and check-ins and just ongoing continuing education. That should be part of your plan. Don't just wait for customers to call you and say, I need something. You should have a way that keeps you top of mind, keeps them coming back, keeps you in front of them in a way that allows you to introduce how you discover, frankly, and then introduce how you can do more with them. And then what's your customer expansion plan? How can you take your existing customers and increase the lifetime value, increase what you're doing for them? One of the things I've discovered over the years is that about 20% of my customers would, and I'm not saying I've nailed this, but about 20% of my customers would do 5-10 times the business they're currently doing with me if I intentionally take the time to discover what else they need, discover how else I can add value, discover how else I can solve more problems, bigger problems for them. There won't be your entire customer base, but we all know that it is much easier to do more business with somebody you've already established trust with than it is to really jump or make people jump through all the hoops to become a new customer. All right, the last two elements. Your customer referral plan. I wrote an entire book called The Referral Engine on this topic. It's one that I'm very passionate about, turning satisfied customers into brand advocates. You essentially, through a referral, are borrowing trust. There's, how many times you've done this yourself? You said, boy, I need to find somebody to do X. Somebody says, hey, don't look any further. They solved this problem for me, or here's how they did it. They're awesome. And the end of the sales journey, right? We stop, we call them up and say, when can you start? So that borrowed trust, that removal of risk is what makes referrals such a potent, we all know this, right? You all know it is such a potent channel. So having a plan to intentionally generate referrals from customers is how you really amplify your referability. You're not going to get referrals unless you deserve them, but certainly once you deserve them, you have to really amplify that. And then the last piece of this is it's another element of referrals, but what I call the partner referral plan. So these are strategic partners. These are non-competing businesses that also serve your ideal client that you could actually add value to their client base, add value to their business, to their offerings by working together in some fashion that really gives them an incentive to put you in front of their audience. The right customer might have 2 or 3 referrals that they could give you, which is awesome, but the right strategic partner might actually fill your pipeline because they've got hundreds of potential folks that they could put you in front of. All right, so that's it. That is the marketing snapshot. You can find it in the show notes, or if you want to just reach out to me at john@ducttapemarketing.com, I'm happy to talk to you about how we could do that for your business as part of the strategy first process. Or if you just want to see a copy of the marketing snapshot yourself, we're happy to make it available to you in one way, shape, or form or another. So that's it. Thanks for tuning in today. We love those reviews. If you give them at Spotify or Apple or Google or wherever it is you get your podcasts, I'd love to hear from you. So if you just want to say hi, it's also just John at Duct Tape Marketing. All right, take care, and hopefully we'll see you one of these days soon out there on the road.